Hey folks, today we're kicking off a new podcast series on the topic of building enterprise software. What precedes is a conversation with a good friend of mine, Hicham El Hamouchi, a man that I've worked with in enterprise settings before, and someone who I know has had a history in the enterprise software space. Our conversation will get more into that, but before we get started, I wanted to mention our upcoming conference, Mono Repo World, coming up on October 7th in Mountain View, California. Check it out at monorepo.tools/conf. I'll put a link in the description below. And without further ado, let's get started. Hey everyone, I'm Zach DeRose, architect at NX, joined here today by the esteemed Hicham El Hamouchi. Hicham, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I'm
You're welcome. You're very welcome. We're kicking off a new series on enterprise software, and I wanted to invite you onto the podcast because I know from some of our previous discussions you have a storied history on the subject. I'm curious if you could maybe introduce yourself to us and maybe take like 5 minutes of going through your story. And I'd be very interested, um, for your perspective, which, like, at what point did you enter into enterprise development, and what was maybe pre-enterprise in your story? Is that a fair
I,
question?
yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So a little bit about me. So I work for let me see, Fortune 100 company right now. I can't really say the name because I didn't get the official permission to represent them right now. So it's a well-known company, but I'm I'm a tech lead and people leader at that company, and I deal with their flagship products pipeline and from PR open to delivery of that app is where I sit, and I think we support a, anywhere from 2 to 300 developers daily writing their code and trying to get them um, as productive as possible. Also, thanks to NX and NX Cloud, there's a little plug there. So, my story. so, um, so, I, so in my story, if we're going to talk about pre-enterprise and enterprise,
We want it
I
all. We
I
want it
I
all.
so I went to college for initially civil engineering, and I had no computer background, nothing. I came from Morocco, and I had at that time I'd maybe played Prince of Persia on a old Commodore 64, I think, or something like that. That was the extent of my knowledge on computers, and then I came to the U.S. and for civil engineering, and they had to take a computer science course, and that's the only class that really kicked my butt. And for some reason I liked it, and I switched to computer science. Um, and then luckily, I think for me, because at that time the computer science world and software engineering was definitely the field to go to.
Yes, it
Not
definitely
not
seems like you had a lot of foresight. I am
Yeah.
I'm interested. What exactly is civil engineering? Is this like building cities
Yeah, the
or
building of it's somebody the building of bridges,
okay?
um, uh, things like that. I
Like
don't know if it's
physical
architecting.
bridges or like metaphorical bridges?
No, no, bridges. Actual, like you would go out and work with the people building bridges and the structural engineering
Okay.
of the. I mean, there's more to that, but that's basically what somebody explained it to me long ago. It was like, yeah, an example. You might go and help people build a bridge. I mean, there was a lot of physics and math
Hmm. I imagine
involved,
a lot of
and
material science as
so
well.
some
I
had,
don't know.
I didn't go. I only did one semester, And then I just like, you know what, time. And I would blame my advisor. He was like not really present. So every time I would go to him, I'm like, hey, I need to do this or that. He's like, yeah, just talk to my assistant or just do that. And I remember I came out of this class one time and I was like, I mean, I was disillusioned. I thought I was like gonna learn something, and I was like doing what I did in second grade. I mean, in secondary, um, which is like, the last 3 years of high school,
Yeah.
where I come from. And I was just walking, and then my mom calls me, and then she's like, "Hey, so and so was is right here, and he found out that you were in the U.S., and he found out you're doing civil engineering. He's like, why are you doing civil engineering? I mean, do computer science." And the funny thing, I was on the phone, and I was standing right in front of the computer science, like the computer science building, and it was like just fate. I just walked in.
Yeah.
I just asked somebody. It's like, "Hey, what would someone need to do to be computer science?" And they were like, "Oh, what's your ID?" And the guy typed it in, and they're like, "Congratulations, you're in computer." I didn't even. I was just asking how, but anyway. So that was my entry to the computer science, and that was like, it was difficult until I understood. Like, I remember it took a couple of semesters to like really understand what's going on. But once I understood what's going on, it was really, it was starting to get easy, and really, you're solving problems in and back then the IDs were really crap. So
Oh yeah.
but the idea of solving problems, like real life problems, like that people had, and in a quick, I felt it a quicker way than building a bridge.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting actually. One of the like big allures of software engineering for me is like that you can actually from down to the bit if you want to, down to the bit you can understand everything. And it's a world like it's a world of bits instead of atoms.
Yep.
And because of that, you can go all the way down if you want to down to like the machine level and understand every piece of that system from the bottom to the top, optimize it however much you want. But it's almost intoxicating the amount of control you are able to have over this. Whereas I imagine with a bridge, like I don't know, it seems like there's so much like I don't know wiggle room in the real world. As weird as that sounds, because it's actually like more solid. But yeah, like at least in my mind, it's like you can't have as much control because like you have to fight gravity, like
Oh
for
yeah, yeah,
one. Like that's the whole point of the bridge, right? Like you try to counteract the gravity to get these, I don't know, the cars across the road or something. I
yeah, yeah,
imagine. I don't know. I'm no civil engineer, but
yeah. I
but
mean,
yeah,
yeah, and you have, and one other thing is like, I think in civil engineering, I think I was thinking about the other time, the worry of, affecting people's life directly, like where something not good, like so similar, like I'm actually googling it, like it could be dams, it could be a railroad, it could be canals, structural engineering, like you're into it has like five common types of civil engineering project is bridges, solar farms, roads, seawall and bulkheads, subways and railways. So for me, one of the extra things that I liked in software engineering is that um, in a lot of it, people don't necessarily will can die because of some bad math.
yeah.
But
Well, sometimes I think they
yeah,
can. I think
yeah,
it kind of depends on what you're working on, but normally, at least in most of what I do, it's like if I mess something up, it's like the styles that don't
yeah,
look quite right.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not that big
yeah,
a deal, thankfully. So,
yeah. So yeah,
but yeah, so we've landed into the computer science classes. Where do you go from school? Like, do you go? Did you graduate with a degree in computer science then?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
did. I spent most of my time in the computer lab, like before I got my personal laptop, and but at that time a lot of people, the connection. So this is 2000. So this
Mm.
is this is around that. You know, I saw somebody in TikTok saying in the late 1900s. You know, it's like, but the yeah, but like around 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
So the internet speeds were not that fast. The computers were pretty slow. I think my first laptop was 133 megahertz processor
Oh
and
my goodness.
3 gigabytes of memory of hard drive space, uh, 16 megabytes of RAM or something like that. I don't know.
Goodness.
It was really not. I mean, and by the way, that was the most powerful one.
Yeah.
And you had to pay real attention to. You can't do what you can do right now.
Yeah.
You had to
Oh,
pay attention.
I've working with JavaScript. I rarely, if ever, or at least the domains I'm in, I rarely, if ever, have to worry about memory. And if you're working with, what did you say? How many megabytes of RAM?
I think it was 16 megabytes or
Oof,
64 megabytes or something.
that's
Yeah, we
not
didn't
that
get to the
much.
gigabyte.
That's so scarily small
Yeah,
compared to compared to
and the
now.
processor is 133 megahertz, like or 233 megahertz, something like that. Right now we have it all in the gigahertz. We have
Yeah,
the stuff, so you can do things and not worry about
yeah,
the
several
efficiency.
orders of magnitude past that at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
The-
And building things took a long time. It was still. I mean, it was the best at that time. So
yeah.
you didn't realize the time it took.
So, just trying to. So I'm. This is before I really got into computer programming like professionally myself. I got started later in life, so I graduated college with my degree in 2012. So this is still 10 years before that. So what is enterprise software at this point in time? Is this like .NET isn't on the scene yet, is it?
Uh, I think they were still using. I think XP had Windows XP was the rage at that point, or
Okay.
no, was it Windows 98 that was the rage, that maybe Windows NT. I don't know. I think Windows XP was not. I think Windows XP was the thing that came out, that was really when I saw other companies really latch onto it, and it was like stable, and you could do some good things with it.
Yeah.
Uh, I actually don't know what enterprise software looked then. Like when I used to in the colleges, there was a lot of um, different type. There are a lot of defunct stuff like uh, what was it, in Unix, Solaris maybe or something. It
Okay.
was there were some people using Unix, not even Linux, Unix, Windows. I didn't know actually what people did in regular jobs, what they went and did.
Mhm.
Like at that point in time, I was like doing C++, and I
Okay.
had no idea what enterprise software was. I mean, I could tell you just a few years later, I kind of came in at my first job.
Okay.
Um, so I graduated, and went to work for this company called Gannett.
Okay.
So they're the people behind USA Today, and they had a lot of IPs, a lot of newspapers across the U.S.
Okay.
So if you go to app.com or indiestar.com or greenvilleonline.com, that's all Gannett. That is it.
Okay.
So
So
my
it's a bunch of
first,
news outlets and these
yeah, yeah,
are
yeah, news outlets, yeah,
newspapers mainly?
media, yeah, media and news.
Okay.
Uh, they were really, really, really big around that time. I mean, people still consumed the news the way, like with newspapers and online, and there was a lot of advertisements. So they were pretty successful. I think. I mean, they're still online right now.
Mhm.
I don't know if as successful as they used to be, but at that time it was like,
Yeah, all online news networks. I don't use them. Like, if anything, it's my experience with them is like I go onto their site, I see the ad blocker pop up thing, and I go, okay, go back.
yeah, yeah,
I tried. I tried to read
yeah.
it.
Yeah, and people actually used to have subscriptions. Like we would get them. So
Yeah,
I was one of the creator of the first paywalls where you would pay to access certain stuff, and people are paying. People,
it was you.
yeah, it was me. I remember like I was at a meeting when and they were like, "Hey, Rupert Murdoch was thinking of a paywall, something like that." It's like we need to do it quickly and stuff like
Yeah,
that. And they told me, "Hey, you have 3 weeks to put like a
like a
demo
proof of
together."
concept.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I did it, and then they were like, "Okay, push it up, push it." It was like, I was like, but and yeah, so yeah,
Okay,
I think they
what
were
did
charging $5 per month or something
I
like
don't
that.
know if you remember this correctly, but could you, like, walk us through, like, the technical specifics of pushing it? Like, these days, like, how do it's like, well, if you're in, like, a more, uh, I don't know, mature or more enterprise, more developed, system, you're probably looking at, like, you know, you you have the pull request, it gets reviewed, it makes it
Hmm.
into, you know, the main branch or the master branch, and then that goes out to some staging, and then maybe QA goes over it, and then eventually you like all get together on a call and you press the launch button and it goes out.
Uh,
uh so that's like what I'm used to, at least these days. I'm curious as what were you like FCPing it over the server?
oh yeah, yeah. Oh no, okay. Let me
Okay.
give you the. So as soon as I joined the company
Yeah.
and we started working, so uh, everything that I learned in college was not really going to be. I mean, some of the algorithm or whatever, but all of it was not going to be used. First
Yeah.
thing they did is like, here's a Perl program, and it's supposed to do some linting. My first project was a linting thing in
Okay.
Perl. Why Perl? Because somebody had written something in Perl, and they wanted me to make it, better.
Okay.
So from there to that time, so the code was stored in Microsoft Source Safe, I think it's called.
Okay.
So if you
So this is like
check out
version
the code,
control?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, when you check out the code, you're the only one that's checked it out. Other people can only view it. So if I made changes, maybe my memory's a bit fuzzy. I don't remember, but I remember waiting for a file. It's like, hey, dude, did you finish with that file? Can I can I update it now?
Yeah.
So that the beginnings of source control. It was not as good as right now,
Mhm.
and all the sites were on these Windows machines, Windows servers. So Windows has this thing called, I think, IIS, where it serves the site. There was a load balancer at the top. So I mean,
Oh,
and they
wow.
had millions and millions of people coming up. So I think
Yeah.
the load balancer would, so they would come. The load balancer would choose whichever um, server to send the request to,
Right.
and the code was stored in a local area, like one area, one drive, so that these servers can actually can get to it. So
Got it.
it wasn't you have to install, at least luckily it didn't have to push it to these hundreds of servers.
Yeah. You don't
It
have to
was
populate the edge network.
yeah,
This is
yeah, yeah.
this is a simpler
Well,
time.
yeah, 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 and actually, I worked on that, getting to populate the edge network with Akamai. But
Yeah.
so whenever we delivered something, we'd zip it, and we would either unzip it on that server, on that I forget what it's called. Let's call it just like a folder in a drive.
Mhm.
Somebody would take it and just put the code there, so it wasn't minified. It wasn't. uglified. You could see the code, you could see the logic, you could see. I mean, there was no real proprietary logic. There was a content management system that when you built it, it took it from that content management system and then deployed it. So there was no proprietary code, but definitely
Gotcha.
people could go and scrape if they had the knowledge, they could scrape that site and make their own
Oh,
news
wow.
news site. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty simplistic. Sometimes if there's something broken in production, you'd go fix it in production.
Yeah.
So there was like I think I remember one time something got deployed, and it usually deployment is like at 3 a.m. Uh,
Hmm.
3 a.m. to 4 a.m. That was the window. The site could be down around that time. There was the least amount of people on the site,
Hmm.
and then we would deploy, and then somebody would check. They would do some smoke tests, manual smoke. There was no automated testing. There was no unit testing. There was no automated. And they would make a smoke test, and they would look, and if something was wrong at that point, either you have this choice of reverting, going back to the previous version,
Hmm.
or if you call the developers, come in at night, just log in, and interesting, we could actually log in from home and everything, but you'd get in, and then you look at the code, you log into a server, and then that server had Notepad plus plus, that was the ID we used at that time because it colored the keywords and stuff, but there was no intelligence to that
Yeah.
to that ID. It was just Notepad plus plus. Um, so over there, you'd basically open the file and see if you can fix something before 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. Uh, before traffic. If something major was down and they needed that feature, you do something like that. But
Yeah.
um,
Did you ever have was there, like, the possibility to roll things back with the version control y'all had? Or was it just like, "You gotta comment let's comment out the feature real quick."
the version control was just really storing it.
Okay.
It wasn't like reverting
Okay, there's not
or
like
used for
you
anything.
could put, like, a flagpole and say, "Hey, this is where we're gonna go back to if this
No,
goes bad."
well, yeah, no, we've never done that. I
Okay.
remember doing. Let's go to the previous version on the server. Like it
Okay.
went to the previous version because we saved. There was folders like whatever the date of the previous deploy, etc. So
Oh,
you would just point to the previous folder, and
yes.
all their servers will go back, and then they'll just delete the cache. And
Yes, I do remember when I was in college and when Git was a foreign thing to me, and I was like, I don't trust it. I didn't trust Git my first few encounters with it. It didn't make sense to me. So the our method of like sharing code was the named zipped files with the date on it. that was that worked pretty well in terms of like you know, version control, honestly.
yeah, yeah,
So
and a
and
lot of people did that.
yeah,
Like
I, I
what you
mean,
just
it
yeah.
works.
Yeah.
Why not?
I shudder at the thought that of doing that right now. And
Yeah. Well, there was definitely times where it was like, oh, we lost whole chunks of code because it's like someone started from the wrong zip file or something like that. So yeah.
yeah, in Gannett, we made little errors. Actually, the funny thing is like we made little errors
Hmm.
in deployment. There were sometimes there were issues, but it
Yeah.
was never. It was. I don't remember being an actual. I mean, we fixed it. Like we had a QA team that looked at everything,
Okay.
and it was generally pretty stable.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
surprised. I'm surprised thinking about it, but
yeah. Well, it sounds like the scope that we're talking about. I would definitely consider that enterprise. It does seem like because of the time period, it looks a lot different than Enterprise does now.
yeah,
But like if you're pushing stuff out for USA Today and also like all these other you know, smaller news outlets, like local news outlets, it sounds like in addition. That sounds like enterprise to me. That sounds like, you know,
Yeah, yeah. No,
something on
my
that
team was
scale.
yeah, my team was mostly dealing on the news outlets instead of USA Today. There was a separate development team that did USA Today, but the 200 sites, like they had the same template. They had different colors. I mean, they would be able to change their stuff, but the content management system and the back end that would take the content and put the visualization code, I guess, the HTML and the JavaScript. Like we they didn't need to do that. They just updated content.
Yeah.
But it's definitely enterprise for sure. I mean, it was it was a large company, uh, and you know,
Yeah.
definitely enterprise. But definitely at that time, um, there was less, like you wouldn't think about audits or cyber or people. And yes, I think at that time people hacked people, but you didn't. You didn't see much. It didn't see much of that.
Yeah.
But
Well, I
I mean,
imagine it's something of a different world. Well, if y'all were taking subscriptions, you probably had payment information, so there probably was valuable stuff there.
yeah, they did
Probably.
it differently. Like, so if that payment, it had to go somewhere else. So it takes them a link to go somewhere else that um, and
Yeah.
I don't remember how they did that payment. I just knew, like, okay, from here, once the paywall came up and said, do you want to pay, I would take them somewhere else, and then
Okay.
they would get that somewhere else. And then when they came in, um, somehow that login and password, they'll create an account or whatever, and then the login password will come to my database, and I
Okay.
just make the API call to get to the database. Yeah, I
It
mean,
sounds pre OAuth.
yeah. It's now that I think about it, it's like, yeah, yeah, it's not the most secure, uh, but I don't know if they never got hacked, and
Yeah.
thankfully stuff, but there was nothing to hack when you came into your account. It's not like you
Right.
had payment information. Like, I think you had to go somewhere else for that payment
Yeah.
information. So yeah,
Yeah, it
we were
sounds
lucky
like
there.
the riskiest thing you had was maybe the username and password, and like and also just the risk that, like you said, your content management system was kind of out there. So if someone wanted to steal your traffic, I guess
Oh yeah,
they could do
yeah,
that. But
you can't even so the log no the database is somewhere else. So the worst thing
okay,
that can happen is that they can bypass the paywall. If somebody would steal that information, bypass the paywall, and then read the news, without paying. But hint hint. I mean, little insider secret, which I think still happens right now on a lot of paywalls. Just delete your cookies, and you're good to go.
yeah,
You delete cookies, or delete JavaScript, you'd see the newspaper. But most people don't know to do that.
well,
So,
they do now.
yeah, I mean, they've definitely changed their coding since 2000 something.
Yeah,
But no, but right now, if you go to many sites that require some paywalls,
hmm
even I don't know,
yeah,
you just delete your cookies, or you know.
yeah. Well, sometimes when they have the ad blocker pop up come up, like we had talked about before.
Mhm.
Sometimes you just delete the banner thing from the DOM and you're
Yeah.
in. So it's still like it's still a thing. I mean, I'm sure they're trying to hit 95% of people, and I think 95% of people aren't going to do that. Most of the
Yeah.
time, I don't either. It's like it's not worth the time most of the time. But
News is free at a lot of places. Like if it's paywalled over here, I just go somewhere else, and the same
yeah,
news is there, so I don't need
yeah,
to pay for
yeah,
it.
same.
But
Um, but yeah, so that's definitely interesting. I'm curious. So, uh, uh, for this company, from what year to what year were you there? And like, how did that? I'd be interested maybe from this when you started to when you left. What changed? And being from NX, I'm particularly interested in like the tooling part of it.
yeah, yeah.
So
So what changed is the world decided that Microsoft SourceSafe or Visual SourceSafe is not. the way to go.
Mhm.
And they created some. There was something called Subversion that came up. So Subversion,
I am familiar.
yeah. So we started using Subversion, um, and but you still committed code there.
Mhm.
There's still no pull requests. There was no people reviewing your code. There was QA people testing your code. I think in Subversion, you basically ask. It was easier to look at the code. Nobody had to check it out and hold it. Now you could
Yeah.
make changes and etc. It was a little bit better development cycles, and but still, from when I started and um, from a tooling perspective, like we were kind of the first. Before Node.js, Node.js had to come out, but the content management system, when we were writing the code for it, um, it had the ability of building, writing the code in JavaScript in the backend. So
Mhm.
we like whatever we would do with Node now, we would able to do it with this software. And
Interesting.
the precursor of eventually what I went to do later.
Right.
So there was that. There was Subversion. Um, so
Do
my whole time there was really we added Subversion when it comes to like tooling and
Mhm. Was there any, like, automation that you were adding in at any points?
no, no, there was no. Well, from our tooling, there was definitely no automation. I think the crowning moment that what we did is at that time there was I think jQuery and something called Prototype JS,
Mhm.
or I forget what it's called. I'm blanking on these names. We wrote a library um, where people at that time were writing JavaScript as a scripting, using it like thinking of it as a scripting language and just writing
Yeah.
however. Um, and what we did in here is an in-house project where we call it Gel. It was called short for Gannett Element, so it was called it Gel. And what it
Mhm.
did is it was like a library like jQuery or Prototype JS, or Prototype, I forget what it's called. And the way you coded the page is instead of putting the scripts at the top, you would put them at the bottom. So what we wanted is like the illusion of speed when you
Mm.
come to those pages. Like you'd see that the text show up. There was nothing waiting, right? The
Right.
text would show up, and then the ads would populate a bit later.
Mhm.
So we had this concept of priority loading. So first you don't block the DOM from loading,
Mhm.
or you reduce the blockages. Like so, sometimes like at that time we go to a page and it would just load, and then it comes up. So we put all the scripts that needed to be at the bottom, and then this library would prioritize the loading um, of stuff. Actually, now that I think about it, it's not necessarily at the bottom. You can put it anywhere, but this script would put it by priority. uh, you start from 100 to 10, and it will, once the DOM is kind of loaded, um, this thing will run the scripts in priority order and get the page load. So instantly when people came to the page, the text came up, and then everything just loaded behind it. So afterwards, like later on, React came out, and a lot of other
Yeah.
libraries came out that do this type of stuff.
Well, now there's all these libraries that are trying to do that at, like, some insane level. Like, you don't
Yeah,
even send the
yeah,
scripts over until you need them, which,
yeah,
like, until you click a button, which
yeah,
wild to
yeah,
me,
yeah.
but yeah, it's
So that
cool.
was the great part about that. So I left that company, and then I went to another company called Concur, and it
Okay.
was a travel an expense company, and a lot of people use them. The enterprise there was a little bit different. So they
Okay.
they also use Subversion from a
Okay.
tooling perspective. They use Subversion. We would commit the code, and um, then you'd open up a review request of
Okay.
that. So the code right now is committed inside the repository. you'd open something called Crucible. It was like I don't know if they still exist, but you'd
Is this like a UI for working with
yeah,
Subversion? Or?
it's it was a I think it was a UI to for reviewing the code,
Okay.
right? So it show you the differences, the changes, it would highlight. I mean, it's basically what GitHub does today with with pull request reviews. You go and see,
Yeah. Diffs.
and yeah, exactly diffs.
How could it be so simple?
Yeah, and if somebody didn't like your code, you need to make changes. You'd make changes. Um,
Hmm.
but the problem is you had it already in the repository, so you to merge it in to do that. Like we didn't do it beforehand, right?
Okay.
But they compared to Gannett, their automation stuff for development, it was pretty good. In the morning, you'd come in, you'd run this, so you'd have a VM where the app is in there. It was a big Windows VM, Windows 2018 VM or so, yeah, and it was I mean they upgraded it. I think the last one was like a 2018 VM or something, but you'd have that. You'd run a command, and everything that has changed database wise
Hmm.
also would come in. So
Hmm.
the app was really big and really complex. There was a database layer to it, there's an API layer to it, there was a services layer to it, the front end code. It was a .NET app, no, it's an ASP app with some pieces of .NET, and it's a
Hmm.
complex app. But from a tooling perspective, it was pretty nice to come in the morning and just run one thing, and everything would update. Like you'd pull the new code, you'd update the database, and you have it, ready for you to to working, to
Yeah.
work in.
When you say like update the database, are you talking about like updating the schema to match the latest stuff, or are you actually updating the contents of it too?
Every, and the schemas, everything. It's what we do right now with those migrations. That when you upgrade, like NX upgrades a bunch of stuff, and you have these
Yeah.
migration files, and so it's migrations. So if
Hmm.
the schema updates, if there is anything that happens to the local
Migration
database,
SQL files
exactly,
that happen in a
exactly,
stack. I'm familiar.
exactly, yeah, yeah.
I don't know
So,
if it's a weird way of solving the problem. I don't really like it, but like it works. So I don't know. You end up with like this unfortunate stack of stuff, which sometimes is like doing something and then adding something more to the stack to revert it, and
yeah,
that seems unfortunate, but at least you'll definitely end up in the right spot at least. So I guess
yeah.
that's the point at the
you're,
end
you're
of the
you're
day.
always failing forward. Like
Yeah.
so, you run the SQL that's wrong, and you fix it with the SQL that's right. So,
Yeah.
but no, but it worked. It worked really well. It's like that group was really on top of their game. There was a lot of really strong engineers and strong and um, they wanted to make sure that the developer experience, like when you did your development, it
Yeah.
was everybody had everything correct and everything the
Yeah.
same, and so at that point I started using the Visual Studio, uh, the the IDE to do some stuff,
Mhm.
which was really really good. So I
Yeah.
had some some be able to write some stuff in C sharp in addition to JavaScript,
Right.
etc. But that was really cool. And then I realized that you know I had this bad view of ASP, and
Mhm.
I'm like, wow, that thing works fast and comes up, and the company is still using some pages right now that is ASP and is still working. Is like I'm like amazed. Like these old technologies are pretty still. Whoever made them, they made them to last. I'm
Yeah.
pretty impressed.
Yeah.
Um, from there, from there, um, you know, we decided to look for, hey, everybody's starting using Git.
Mm.
Everybody's starting to use GitHub. Everybody's starting to Node.js, React had just come out. This is like I
Yeah.
think the 2014 era, and I think then was enterprise software started to change. Maybe other companies started using it early, but it concurs with my first interactions with GitHub, um, and would and that made it much better. Like um, we were we were still using the subversion way of just committing, so everybody was committing to master without pull requests and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, and but you were able to
But at least there's a
eventually,
trail, I guess, at that
yeah,
point, right? So
yeah, it was still the wild west a little bit. But then I remember going to meetings and we're talking about unit testing, um, and we need to, okay, is there a way to format this thing that we don't have to always tell people to format stuff. So the tooling, at least in the enterprise I've been in, is like now it's starting to look more like what we have today,
yeah,
um, like structured processes where you, at the beginning when we did Git, like everybody was just committing code into master, and I remember people, they wanted that top spot of how many commits somebody had. In GitHub, it shows you the
yeah.
top contributor. So I
Hmm.
remember looking at commits, and if somebody was updating a Markdown file, they would update one line, commit that, update the second line, commit that, update the third line. So you'd have 100 commits for 100 sentences, and just to
That's when you squash and merge and say, "Shut up."
yeah, there was none of that because nobody was really controlling that and
Yeah,
blocking that.
yeah,
Um, so so that at that level, okay, so we started using GitHub, talking about unit testing and talking about like, hey, we need to be testing this stuff and we need to be et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah. So
Um,
for this company, what did it look like? Like, I guess we talked about your previous company, how you like deployed to prod. How did this look in terms of deploying to production or to getting the code out there? Was there a build step at this point, or are you still just
yeah, so the they had a different team, and doing that, the deployments, etc. I mean, they had a whole. I mean, the previous
okay?
company had a whole team as well, but
Yeah. Well, this is
I
all
could.
very enterprise too. I mean, like that. I guess this is the position you're in now. Is you're that guy now who's like figuring out how to take things from code's ready to go to let's take it to the next step. But
Yeah, in that company, I was less. I was doing architectural stuff, like
mhm,
not doing feature work, like actually doing features, but the architectural stuff, like building. Um, this is with Yusuf in the previous podcast, where like
yeah,
updating, doing anything architectural, the way the site looked, the JavaScript on the site, everything that feature teams would need. So we,
yeah,
we were doing that. In terms of deployment, they would build the app, and this is a very high level summary. They would the app, and they push it on their servers.
okay,
There was no. I don't think anybody can go and modify stuff in production,
okay,
compared to Gannett, where I could, like, when there's a problem, I could go and fix it in production and then merge back the code into Subversion. So I
right,
could I could do that. I could deploy. I could do a lot of stuff.
yeah,
I could break the site if I mean the amount of power I wielded there was and not just me. I mean my whole team. We
yeah,
could at 3 a.m. I could go and change something in production if I wanted. We never did that unless there was a breakage. But in this company, it was more structured, where like no, only a few people maybe had access,
yeah.
um, and etc. So
I feel like that
uh,
would help me sleep better at night.
yeah,
Actually, like honestly, as long as
yeah.
I'm not one of the few people that has access. But yeah,
Hey, I felt better that I didn't have access to production in this new company.
yeah,
Uh, I mean, also I in the previous company in Gannett, I knew everything ins and outs. So
Right.
they probably wanted me to have access to production. Something broke, but in this
Yeah.
new company, I felt better that I didn't really need to call in at 3 a.m. I didn't need to, because I don't know how you guys deploy this stuff.
Yeah.
But in there, the second company is where there was more structure and there was more processes on how to deploy, and there was more tooling, developer tooling in the development
Yeah. No more Notepad
process.
plus plus. You're actually
Yeah,
working
there was
with
no, yeah,
Visual Studio.
Visual
Um,
Studio. Not the Visual Studio Code, the actual
yeah.
Visual
The real
Studio.
one. The
Yeah,
real one.
the one that you have to pay for a license, I guess.
Yeah. Well, like when I think of old school enterprise, like that's the stuff that comes to mind is like Visual Studio and MSDN, like
Yeah.
that
Yes.
whole the
Yes.
developer network, the Microsoft developer network. That was real big when I got started.
Yeah, it was.
Like kind of looking around for jobs and stuff, and even a little bit before that when I was doing like my internships and stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, there was. I think also from IDE perspective, Eclipse had come out,
Hmm.
and it was if you're doing Java, that was the IDE that you would
Yeah.
use. I mean, they were working, so you could see a shift. But what you were allowed to do anything you want. The funny thing is, my laptop, I could uninstall stuff and install. I could change it to Linux, like my Windows machine. I
Mm.
could I could completely change it to a Linux machine if I wanted. So even how what you controlled on the laptop, uh, there was no um, security wise. It's in my current laptop. I can't do anything. I have to get permission to install stuff. I have to,
Yeah.
uh,
I guess
you know,
that's something that's kind of like distinctly enterprise too, is like the idea of having a company specific like app store that you need to get your stuff from there. I've had that a lot of places since joining at NX, so I'm
yeah,
familiar.
yeah, yeah,
That's always kind of wild to me. Um, yeah, starting with NX, that's when maybe not all Fortune 100 companies, but like a lot of Fortune 500 companies have some experience with now. And before joining NX, it was I my sweet spot is smaller shops. I feel like, but smaller shops that try to get to that enterprise level still, just with not as much person power maybe.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's funny. I want as a story I just remembered from my
mhm.
previous from Gannett. So it was the, you could go on a site and you could just mouse over an ad and you could have virus on your computer.
Yeah,
It's something, and at that time Google would flagged one of our sites as like a potential malware thing. It's just by mousing over. I don't remember exactly what the how you do that, but anyway. So as the developer, something happened and my computer got infected, and I look at it. I'm seeing these three icons that are not safe for work icons.
Eey.
I was
Yeah,
like, what is that? And my computer starts slowing down, and I'm like, oh my god! How do you explain that, right? How do you explain these things to, like? Oh, I know, I don't even know how it happened, right?
yeah.
And I was like so scared. I'm like, oh my god, this is first of all, it's embarrassing. Secondly, I'm gonna have to explain to somebody like, hey, there's some, you know, this naughty stuff on this computer. Can I get another computer so you can fix it?
That's a fun
And
IT discussion to have. Right?
yeah, it's like, and yeah, and management was pretty strict at that time. The one thing also that's changed in the enterprise world is the way management treats their employees.
Mm,
Is like from a very militaristic style to a
yeah.
very collaborative style right now, where we care about your opinion, we care about your well-being, we care about a lot of stuff that when I was in at that time they didn't care about that. So I could be in so much trouble. There's things that was said to me in back then that would be an HR violation right now. Like,
Yeah.
so anyway, so the access that I installed, luckily for me, there was this thing had come out. It's called Malware Bytes. There's a software called Malware Bytes or something like that
Yeah.
that you can clean up your computer. I put it. I was trying to do that. I was trying to install it, but the computer was so slow. I had to reboot it in F5 mode and do some things to install this particular software so you can clean it up.
Yeah.
And man, like, I was sweating all night trying to fix this thing, and finally, I managed to erase all that thing, and I told the security guy at some point that they actually hired a security guy at one point. I told him, he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm part of the people that created that software that cleans up these
Oh,
malwares."
I thought he was
So
gonna say he was part of the guys, one of the guys that made the malware.
well, yeah, and I would have felt better if he did the
They're
malware.
at least they're on your side now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No,
But I had
that's yeah.
I had complete control of my laptop. I could install whatever
Yeah.
I wanted, and thinking about hacking. I mean, like whatever proprietary information it was just I can put it in a zip file. I can put it in a. I can get a stick. I can take things out.
Yeah.
So yeah, so luckily I didn't get fired on that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so the second company, um, we eventually, got to we never before I left that company, we didn't really write the unit test and put it inside the code base, etc.
Yeah.
But it was starting to go that way, right?
Okay.
Um, but my last, and I did a couple of startups after that, and there obviously there was no security, but
Hmm.
I created the GitHub repositories and things like that. So a little bit more what we look at today,
Yeah.
but everybody still had access, and in startups you don't have the time to do everything. Like, oh, I'm gonna write all these unit tests, I'm gonna do these things.
Yeah.
But my current company that I got to, they also they definitely use GitHub. That's for sure.
Mm.
So there's GitHub. There was a process. You'd have to open pull requests. You can't. You'd have access to merge stuff. Your computer is locked down. You have to have admin. You have to request admin access as a developer. Other non-developers don't have admin access to their machines.
Yeah.
So it was a big shift to coming to this company where I mean we manage people's
Especially after
money.
taking some time doing some startups, I imagine.
Yeah,
There's like a little
yeah,
break in the chain.
yeah.
So
So we manage people's money, so it had to be super secure, and there
right.
were processes in place. You'd have to you'd have to take some courses. Um, First, you have to request access to a bunch of stuff. Even for the Slack, like you can't just get access like that. You have to request access. Your manager has to approve it.
Yeah.
Um, and and there I saw a lot of structure when it comes to like security and watch out, what we don't want this, we don't want that, and
Hmm.
nobody can push things to prod without permission. that
Right.
that was that was like clearly we're stopping people. So um, it was there. I felt, well, wow, it's like, wow. It hindered development because I mean, I felt that at the beginning it hindered development, and I think now I feel like you have to do that type of stuff after
Hmm.
seeing all the hacks around the world, and so many companies getting hacked, and the customers' reduction of confidence on this company, and in the company losing money and losing whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so it was very there. You're like, okay,
Yeah. Well,
there
that
is
trust is like the biggest asset a lot of these companies
yes,
have with their users, with their customers. So
yeah,
it makes sense that they invest a lot of their resources into preserving that trust and making sure it doesn't, you know,
yeah,
it's not lost because that's the
yeah,
entire company at that point, right?
exactly,
So
yeah. Yeah, and I mean the fines that you get for that, like in that could be in the hundred millions of dollars. So
Yeah.
they definitely don't want to pay that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you definitely don't want to pay the fines, but I think at the end of the day, it's like, well, yes, you have to pay those fines, but even worse than the fines is like the loss of business that you have because like you have competitors, and if your
Yeah,
competitors are trustworthy
yeah,
and for whatever reason you are not, that's why would they stay with you?
yeah. That's true. That's true.
So
Yeah, and here my actually my first year at that company. That's when I met um, Victor and Jeff,
mhm,
where we were sitting there um, with a bunch of my colleagues, and we're like, we need to try to make this development process better. Like,
mm,
how do we do more things, right? Everybody, while there was structures and etc., everybody had, like, okay, well, I can install, I can use WebStorm, I can use this, whatever IDs. Some people still use Vim,
yeah.
Vim.
Well, it's remarkable to me, like branching out more to some of the other like areas of tech. Like I'm definitely more focused in the JavaScript area. I feel like in our area, it's like the tools you mainly get from npm. Actually, is like it's like npm add and then whatever tool you're going to do, whether it's a unit test framework or like an end-to-end framework or something like that, or if you're like spinning up something new. Like most of these
Yep,
things have either an npm package or it's like something built in. There's some code gen built into an
yep,
npm package to get you set up. But like a lot of these other sections of programming or of tech, they actually like depend on the IDEs a good bit to do that kind of stuff. Like JetBrains, I'm thinking in particular in like
yep,
Java worlds. It's like, well, how do you create a new project? You don't run it. You don't seem to run like a terminal script. You actually open up JetBrains or your IDE and you like go
yep,
through their wizard to get that thing started. I think
yep.
that's very like .NET-ish too. Um, I
Yes.
think yeah, I think .NET maybe has more, maybe more folks that will pop open the terminal to run some scripts like that. But I think most people are doing it through like a UI. So
Yeah, I don't remember a
interesting.
terminal, to be honest, like in .NET. I mean, definitely in the Java, I think, where they use Eclipse, and I think, or IntelliJ, like we said, Jet.
Mm,
IntelliJ, by the way, was a really great thing. I mean, expensive, but it was a really great. It's a really great idea.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't remember going to a terminal and typing some stuff. It was just click, new something, and then
yeah,
it will create the boilerplate, what you needed, and you just go straight into coding. And the one thing I like about that, I think JavaScript, I wish it would have been like that, where there's I, I mean, I don't know. There's benefits of having multiple flavors of things, and there's benefits of not having multiple flavors of things.
yeah,
Um, when I started working in Golang, there was this one way of doing it. There was no wasting time and like, oh, am I going to use Mocha, Jest,
yeah,
this? What am I going to use for testing? What am I going to use for this? I was go test, you know, and the other ones you don't have to worry about the boilerplate. I mean, if you decided to do the MVC, I don't think you have a choice, but you have to use it the way it's actually designed to be used.
right.
You write the unit, the testing the way it's designed to be used. You build it the way it's designed to be used. I think in Java you choose Maven or Gradle.
Hmm.
I think maybe those are the two choices that you may have. Maybe there's more. You build it however the people designed it. You don't have to worry about that. So automation that gets created for that is, I feel like, simpler,
Hmm.
because the patterns are already decided, and if everybody's deploying it this way or building it this way, then there's very little. It's like, hey, why is this wrong? Why does it not compile? Well, if it's not compiling, it's because there's an error in the code, not because if there's an error in the compilation
Right.
code.
Yeah.
So
You
so
don't
I
have
felt
to
that
think
was
about
good.
that piece of it. You don't have to think about that layer. It's that layer is given, and so
Exactly.
it must be me,
Yeah,
right?
exactly, exactly. And I don't experience that
Yeah.
no,
Well,
actually,
that's like a surprisingly comforting thing to know when you're like, "Yes, this must be me," and not
yeah,
like, "Uh-oh.
yeah,
Is this something crumbling underneath me that I don't understand?" That's a much
yeah,
scarier place to be, I think. So,
yeah. It's funny. Just yesterday, um, there was an issue with the build. No, there was an issue with the tests were hanging up in CI, and
mhm,
but they were working locally. Like it was just like, what's happening here? So we
right.
had upgraded to Angular 17,
Yeah,
and and that PR in the CI worked fine. Everything was good. And then once it merged, and then we started hearing like, oh, there's issues here, and troubleshooting it. We They came up with like two fixes: either downgrade Cypress because Cypress is doing something
yeah,
that would, I think, would request. I don't know what it was, but they're still investigating. But Cypress, like somebody was able to, oh, we downgraded the previous lower version of Cypress. Oh, that fixed it. Or you're looking at, is there something wrong in Cypress? And then somebody made a different change, and it was sometimes we experience things like that, like um, maybe you have to contact, because for example, the Java folks, when they create when the new version happens of Maven, of Gradle,
right.
um, I don't know if these type errors happen. Um, the JavaScript world, I think, is so complex, and there's so many use cases, and then so many
Yeah,
things that not every, like, even when they, like, I'm sure, and Cypress is a really good tool, and a lot of people
yeah,
use it. And the upgrade may cause other people to break in a very weird way that you can't
yeah.
even anticipate.
Well, I feel like that's kind of the nature of the ecosystem we're in. Like I said, like how do we get stuff? Well, we go to npm and we pull down a package that someone out there is working on. So we're like, most of us don't pay for these packages, so
Yeah,
we're kind of like uh, hoping for the best and relying on good graces of other folks. But just the nature of that ecosystem too is like it's very pluggable. Like
yeah,
a lot of these packages, they're not, it's not the de facto end to end, it's not like node end to end testing. It's
yeah,
Cypress, it's a branded thing, and they have a vested interest in making that pluggable and making that like open to, multiple front end frameworks and multiple build processes
yeah,
and multiple all these things. And so the surface area of that is just, massive, to the point where it's like, um, it's good in the sense that, you can take, there's a whole lot of puzzle pieces out there and you can arrange them yourself, but those puzzle pieces are changing every now and then. And so when that happens, like, it's kind of on you to figure that all out. So
yeah,
I it's like a weird form of tech debt, just using any package. I think it's not like, it's not something we think of as tech debt, I don't think, but I think it inherently is. It's like you're taking on the ownership of arranging all these puzzle pieces together to create your app.
yeah,
And so if you want to, stay current with all these puzzle pieces, you've got to continuously be invested in those things, continuing to arrange themselves.
yeah,
So,
and spend, and definitely spend some time to like, hey, we need to upgrade, and that's one change. So for
yeah.
in the beginning of this company, when I joined, there was like, okay, we need better developer tooling in what we're doing. So
Yeah.
at that time, the company was the process was AngularJS, and AngularJS was coming end of life. I mean, there was going to be an end of life, and Angular had just come out. So Google had
Yes.
just Angular, and like we're looking and we're debating whether Angular or React, which way we're going to go. like what's the developer experience? So the first time is like what's the developer experience? Um, we spoke about it in the previous company at the tail end of my tenure there, and
Yeah.
then now we're like, okay,
That's
developer
that's actually a
experience.
really interesting insight. I bet that first company you were at, I bet no one ever said the words developer experience.
Yeah,
That is a
never.
new concept.
New concept. Yeah, and it's like developer experience. So, and developer experience means better development and ease of this and ease of that. Um, and so they invested quite a bit to okay, we need what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it. Like okay, we're gonna choose Angular. So, but how is this build gonna be? Like this Angular CLI, it's working, but it's not really working for us. Q in NX.
Yeah.
This for enterprise. Like, okay, well, this thing, and I'm pretty happy that initially we worked with the NX. Uh, did you guys change your name from Narwhal to NX? Is that the is that what I heard?
Uh, it's yes, we are NX on like everything that you'll see out there. Like it's nx.dev. It's the Twitter handle is NX. The YouTube is NX. All those things that you'll see us, those are all NX. I think legally the company name is still Narwhal Technologies.
Okay,
But that's just a matter of I don't know if we're going to change that or not. I think Jeff was looking into that. But yeah.
it's probably Narwhal DBA, doing business as NX.
Yeah, something like
There's a
that. I think the cool thing for us would be that like the narwhal is going to become like our Octocat, like for GitHub, and we'll be NX. So
Yeah. That's great. So yeah, so we worked with NX. Like I'll start calling it NX from now. Um,
sure.
and it this is like the first time is like, okay, how do we structure our coding in our repository in a way that the development experience is great, the folder structures make sense, you could separate things by ownership. Like
Hmm.
that ownership conversation was never in previous companies. I never had like, oh, this needs to be owned. Like these are people that are going to review. I mean,
Yeah,
at previous companies, like, oh, you made some change. Everybody who's available can go and review that. Anybody can go.
yeah,
The sense, the ownership, and people being responsible for those small chunks, um, and then there was kind of conversation about CIs. Like, hey, how how do we do this CI as like we want to be able to run, so we want to force people to run to write tests. That was one, like, okay, I did you write your unit test? And developers are they're like, I don't have the time. Like, do we really need to? And it's like, no, you need to write that unit test. Like, otherwise I will block. And we start blocking PRs based on if there's a unit test or not.
hmm
And I remember, so we were looking for developer experience and making sure this the structured processes and security and um, and and then the CI part is like, how do we get it in an automated way where people are not going and clicking the merge button, just say, oh, you're ready, your PR is ready, click
yeah,
merge. Oh, there's a conflict. Oh, something happened. And we were seeing people having issues with, like, oh, the person that committed the PR before broke my story.
yeah.
My so so the CI came into place, and this is the first time. So we did a lot of stuff with Circle CI in the startup, and just to get things. But at the enterprise, at everybody had their own version of. I think they were using Jenkins to deploy some stuff,
Hmm.
but I don't remember it being connected to GitHub and connected to what the developers are going to experience.
Hmm.
So in this company I'm currently at, that's when that whole conversation starts. So we had the build tooling and the CI. It's like, why not? And in the world, by the way, a lot of people were going. It's funny. It's like the trends of the industry is going towards that, and everybody's trying to do these type of things.
Right.
Um, and so we got the early version of NX before it even became NX. That structure, and we got everybody to agree on that. We we talked about monorepos. It was people were talking about monorepos. Like everybody was like doing the separate things. Like, hey, how do we consolidate that? Um, then CI, like we need to be able to run these tests. We're going to make sure that all these quality checks. So we're gonna add quality checks now. Your linting, formatting. When Prettier came out, that was like quickly added to
Yes.
the repository because in
I
pull request,
definitely remember my life before and after Prettier. That
yeah,
was there's a whole like range of discussions I no longer have. Just
yeah,
completely thanks to Prettier, which
yeah,
those are the worst discussions. I had no interest in them at all, honestly. Like, where do you put the brace on an if statement? Like, I don't care.
yeah. My
Prettier just
OCD.
solved all those problems. Just and those were so many pointless conversations.
I know. You know,
Beautiful.
it's funny. We had some discussion and some disagreements on using Prettier, on forcing TypeScript.
Yeah.
There was a lot of resistance on structured stuff. The argument was, you know, JavaScript, you could express yourself any way you want. Why use TypeScript? It doesn't let you do these things. Like what that's the
Yeah.
point. We
Yeah.
don't want you to do certain things. We want and Prettier. It's like, well, if I like to put the brace here, I don't want to be. And I remember my argument is like, you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Like it will do it for you.
Yeah.
Like just stuff.
There
And
I do remember like right before getting into Prettier, right before like going into that world, there was a little bit of trepidation. Like I do like the style of this stuff. Like I do like to have my own style of I like the way it reads out.
yeah,
But it was such an easy trade to just be like, okay, this is something reasonable. I'm going with this. And now every time I hit save, I don't have to think. I don't even think about formatting. I actually
yes,
use it's crazy. I actually find myself using Prettier um not as my formatter, it's actually my syntax checker because I'll hit save and if things format, I know the syntax is
yeah,
correct.
yep, yep,
Which
yep, yep.
complete paradigm shift and completely unexpected. That's how things would happen. But
Yeah, the
it's
guy who
grateful for
created,
that.
yeah, the team and the guy that created Pretty. I mean, they need. I was like, I think at that time I wanted to send like, I mean, they did a big favor. I think
Mhm.
that project was. You're right. It reduced the amount of swirl on pull request comments. Like
Yeah,
NIT, um,
yeah,
space, extra space here. And I
yeah. Get
remember
out of here.
that thing being riddled with that,
Yeah.
and if people getting angry like, this guy's a stickler
Well,
for.
it's the worst. Those are the worst arguments.
Yeah,
there's no point. There's absolutely no point. And then it all gets like minified and compiled away.
yeah,
Like no one
yeah,
cares. Just
yeah.
it's,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So we came to that, and okay, so we got rid of that. We added a bunch of linting, like we did like at this point we wanted to control a little bit how people wrote code. So this
yeah,
is like the evolution. Like in previous, you could write however you want. Here is like, okay, well, don't import it from two levels down, two levels up. Don't
yeah,
import code two levels up. I mean, people used to do
yeah.
some interesting stuff. Like, okay, the
Well,
si- the thing will stop it from doing that.
yeah.
And
Well, and don't import your testing. You know,
yeah,
your testing assets into production. I know we've had some experience with that. Um, that's rough. That's rough. But it's like, and it's just a silly mistake that I've probably come very close to making several times, just because sometimes you just import the package just with
yeah,
the tooling, and that's what happens, and it's like it's very easy to miss that, and yeah, that's why the code reviews are important, even with all the tooling, because maybe there's lint rules you haven't thought of yet that need to be
Yeah.
in there. And obviously the automation, like for checking that kind of stuff, having the automated checks in there to give you just like, before you get any further, you get the red squigglies right away that just tell you,
Yeah.
as soon as you import that package, this was wrong. Don't let's go back. If you don't catch it there, it catches it in the CI and it throws the
Yes.
error, and so you make sure it doesn't even come close to coming in. But at
Yes.
the very least, you should have the code reviews there before it gets into main, um, to prevent you from making the mistake. And then, because like, and even then, like every enterprise system I've been in now, there's at least something like a staging where you go out to there, and either QA's out there looking at it, or the developers are out there checking on staging at least before things get released, to make sure things didn't break. So there's so
Yeah.
many stopgaps now for catching these things. And I think it's all that is good. I do think we always run into this problem with our ecosystem of just the pluggability of it all, and like the puzzle piece based nature of it. All of that, all of that goodness, all of the prevention comes at a price, and part of that price is like managing all that stuff. I
Yep.
think that's like where NX, especially in earlier iterations, that's like almost all of what we did. Now we've branched out into much other, a lot of other spaces, particularly like the CI process. But for a long time, like just giving you a way of, like, it was us managing like how your puzzle pieces were configured,
Yep.
but there, at least you didn't need to at that point, which was like, that was a huge value proposition. And I think in particular just because it was giving you a way of taking like the valuable puzzle pieces and putting them in place for you. So like unit
Yep.
tests were there, end-to-end tests were there. You still had to write them, obviously, but all the weirdness of like, how do you set up this tool? And also, like, there's usually 5 different ways of setting it up. And if you have 5 different teams on your, like, inside of your organization, they're probably all going to set it up a different way, which means you can't play with each other very well,
Yep.
or there's going to be weirdnesses, which is, and arguments at the same level as those
Yep.
prettier arguments that just got, that prettier just eliminated. So I think for a long time that's NX's main value proposition, is like, we're the prettier of how you set up your workspace. And I think we're still that. I do think that, on top of that, the providing you like an out of the box CI solution, on top of, like, that builds on top of that,
Yep.
like, that's, in some ways it's like we're turning CI into another one of those puzzle pieces, but it's another puzzle piece that's managed largely by NX. So I think we're doing pretty good at establishing a happy middle ground between still exposing the puzzle pieces and letting you move them, while putting them in place for you. If that makes
Yep.
sense, because like
Yep.
you said, like for your situation, the Angular CLI, the all the Angular tooling got you probably 90% of the way there, but there's still 10% that you needed to do. Hopefully NX does a better job of getting you like 95% there, 98% there, but there's always like the 2% or the 1% that, you need your custom scripts, you need ways of plugging into that too. Like, pluggability isn't all bad. It's great,
Yep.
especially going all the way back. Like, it's control. Like, yes, you can have all these things, but especially in other environments, I feel like, maybe I just don't understand them enough. But I don't feel like I have that control in those situations where you have to do things the prescribed way. Um, Now all of a sudden you're constrained a little bit more. I think in a large part, it is nice to have constraints. I think constraints breed creativity rather than stifle it, weirdly. But sometimes you still need to just get something done, and the more
Yep.
control you have over that, and the more mastery you have over that, mastery plus control gives you is super powerful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I do believe, like at one point I was like, constraints, but now that I'm the constrainer, I guess.
I am the one who constrains.
I'm the one who constrains. I, I don't do it because I like to do. I think it's a need. Everybody, well intentioned,
Mhm.
will do some mind-boggling stuff that you're like, why are you doing this? No, just from even setting up the project, like you said, like
Yeah.
the five different teams setting up a different, and you look at them as like, well, but you, why? I mean, like
Yeah.
it doesn't. It's not conducive for unit. I still have to force people to write unit tests and end-to-end tests. Like this is still a muscle we're currently building. So
Yeah.
there's an enterprise-wide right now. There's an enterprise-wide mandate by end of year to
Yeah.
have test automation, UI tests, not just unit test. Unit test is like assuming that you already have it. Um, UI testing, like
Mhm.
if you're doing anything that's front end, like we want everything, every project in the company um, would be kind of done by end of year, and everything will be unit test, UI tested,
Yeah.
and
Well, I
etc.
mean, I think that's a great goal to have, particularly for the, like this was a problem you mentioned earlier. It's like, well, someone comes in and they made a change that broke your feature, and that happens. And especially if all you have is unit tests too, like, yes, the unit tests still pass, congratulations, things still broke.
Yeah,
But I think the goal would be to have like some sort of automated test that a developer wants to write, because them writing that test is their safeguard to make sure someone can't come in and break their feature.
yeah,
And that's what you want. You don't want to come in on a Wednesday and be like, "Hey, urgent news. This is broken. We have to go in and fix it now because some other team did it." You want it to be, "Hey, that team had to figure out how to," or that let's be nicer about it. That team got a nice clear signal that what they did broke our code. And
yeah.
so they had to figure out how to work their code around that. And everyone won because of that. And you don't
Yes,
even know you won because
yes,
instead of being all stressed out on your Wednesday morning, you're sipping your coffee and you're figuring out how to, make better experiences for your users, which I think
yeah.
that's what everyone wants to be doing.
Yeah,
So
it's funny you just said that. It's like just in my group right now, we're making changes. Like architectural changes, like adding Playwright,
yeah.
Cypress, making modifications
Well, it
here and
sounds like
there.
the Angular upgrades, that's always a big one too. Like that's if you have the good automation in place, it should be okay. Here's the
Yes,
PR. Do we have the green lights? We have the green lights. We are good. Done.
yes,
And that's it.
yeah, and it's true. It's true. I think the last one. This is to your point of we should write more tests and safeguard. There's some things that you can't see because so currently right now our UI tests are in CI, but they're not blocking anything. We're just running them for this to scale to see the infrastructure that we need to scale it up and etc. But it's not blocking. So a
Mhm.
lot of people are not looking at those tests. So for a bit, there was some reporting issue. Something when the Cypress tests end, there's supposed to be some reports generated in a folder.
Mhm.
But that's not happening. It happens locally on the machine, but it doesn't happen in CI.
Yeah.
So we're trying to troubleshoot what's going on there. But nobody saw it until we're trying to take that results data and as part of the testing initiative that we're having, you're trying to take that results and put it somewhere so that we can see that this has been tested, et cetera, and reports can be generated
Yeah.
for leadership to see, et cetera. And then we're like, hey, these files are not great. What's happening here? And then somebody traces like 10 PRs ago or 20 PRs ago,
Yeah.
this thing was merged in. And from that file is not getting created. Um, I mean, it makes no sense. It's not created. We look through, but it's not created. So we're trying to do a
Yeah.
workaround right now. But if there was a test that we had written that checks for that file, so now we're writing the test to check for the files,
Yeah.
and we have to write a suite of tests just to make sure that our platform changes don't break other platform things. Because it's difficult to know that okay, this person made a change to uh, the way the Angular build happens, for example. Right? Like, and
Mhm.
this is what they did. I think they moved. They're trying to move something in the dev server to be an NX executor or something.
Okay.
And from there, the Cypress result, actually the Cypress and Playwright, because we're running both, Cypress and Playwright results are not showing anymore, like in
Mhm.
CI. So but if we had tests to check for files, to check for things,
Yeah.
we probably would have figured that like 20 PRs ago,
Yeah.
and that developer would have had to figure out how to make it work in CI
Yeah.
before merging it. So,
Yeah.
in his mind, maybe it's good that those tests were not there. So now, or I don't know, but
Well, it's bad ultimately, but that's like I don't know. So with some things, there's some things I would much prefer to just push forward ahead. Let's break things and let's let's break things, but we'll break it quick and we'll fix it quick, and that's fine.
yeah,
But I feel like, especially in this enterprise scale, I feel like it's almost always beneficial to have like a two pass system, which is make like we have to make the thing work, but we also have to validate that this thing is working. And so and oftentimes like writing writing code to to do that validation is really helpful to do first as your first pass,
yeah,
because that will like describe, well, if you can code out the success criteria, it's like that's actually the more important piece, because now if you have that success criteria and you have a way of like making it solid, I think
yeah,
that's you know then you're actually rather than just kind of pushing forward and blindly kind of seeing, okay, did I achieve my goal? Yes, I think so. Let's merge it. Now you have a very solid like one or zero. Like,
yeah,
is this working? Yes. Okay. Good. And then you can go forward. And the added benefit is now going forward, we can add that automated check, and that automated check is pretty cheap, honestly. Like
yes,
it's for most of these things, it's like what some a few milliseconds of computation, and it's like,
yeah,
okay, we can do that. And
yeah,
yeah, as you do it, like it'll add up over time. But I mean,
yeah,
that's part of the that's part of all the stuff that NXCI is set up to manage, is to scale that time as you go and as all your stuff grows, and make sure you're not like, it shouldn't be that you're building this massive thing that every time you submit a PR, you have to run the whole world against your entire monorepo. There should be like intelligent ways of going about doing that, and I think that's really what our mission has become
yeah,
these days. And I think that I'm excited about that. So so
yeah. Oh, the affected, like running only what has been changed,
mhm.
and the dependencies, that's definitely solved. I mean, we use it extensively. Like
Yeah.
we can't run everything, so
Well, you can,
well, you can,
but you don't want to.
exactly,
Especially when it comes to like the UI tests, where these things like a UI test, if you're actually automating through, standing up Puppeteer or Cypress or Playwright, or running these things where it actually takes time. Like some of these things, well, like we were talking about milliseconds for most of the validation, but for those UI tests, probably looking at some of them taking like maybe 30 seconds wouldn't be that weird, I would imagine. So
yeah. If we can get it to 30 seconds, that'd be great. We're talking minutes
Yeah.
we're talking. So that's another. And how to write UI test. Maybe somebody needs to come up with something.
Yeah.
But right now, the only way, again, as the constrainer, the only way that I can do something is put a time limit
Yeah.
to how long this thing runs. And if it fails, then one of the good thing about quality checks is I don't have to face people face to face and tell them why the
Yeah.
thing
Well,
failed.
no person needs to. Like it's the
Yeah,
prettier effect. Like you
yeah,
don't argue with prettier. You just sit
yeah,
back and accept its change, right? And it's the same thing with a lot of these automated tests. And then like sometimes the validation is not written the best. And that's unfortunate. But that's still a lot better than just having a heated like
yeah,
argument with someone over GitHub
yeah,
PR
yeah.
comments. So
And when people escalate to their leadership and then their leadership escalate to my leadership to say, hey, why is this thing not working? Um, you know, you can point at the like, hey, this thing is broken.
yeah,
These are the and actually a lot of people, especially leaders, are cognizant of the fact that these UI tests or unit tests or whatever needs to pass.
yeah,
Like I'm not trying to make people miserable. We're trying to make some secure stuff go out. We want to make sure that yes, it takes a little bit longer to write these UI tests. It takes a little bit longer to write more robust testing. But
mhm,
in the end, nobody's gonna. The reason you're doing that is a lot of times you're trying to not get called at 4 in the morning. Is that nobody's gonna call you at 4 in the morning
yeah,
and say, "Hey, this thing broke." And
yeah,
yes, it hurts now, but as you continue on, and like the pretty example, people were pissed in the beginning, and then now it's not even a conversation. Now
yeah.
it's stuff
Well,
that
the return on the investment hopefully would be like self-evident. So,
yeah, yeah, and I think it comes like close to the end of the journey. Going from now developer experience, CI to quality check, and make sure that the the, the product is well tested, right, and checked. I mean, you check. We even check pull request titles, like. um,
yeah,
so there's these various. Is there a Jira connected to this feature? That means it's not somebody just writing whatever. It's like it's connected to an intent that was already groomed and well
yeah,
thought out, I guess. There's various checks, because now there's like at least in our industry, like we have auditors coming in and saying, looking, it's like, hey, does this PR? Why does this PR merge? I mean, there used to be a question many years ago. It's like, why was this PR merged without the CI checks and finishing? I was like,
mm,
well, we had to force merge it because, um, you know, we were trying to do a release, etc. But now there's none of that. Now it's like, okay, if the CI doesn't pass, there's nobody, like I'm not gonna go and force merge it. It's like we have
right,
to figure out why. Is it the PR? Is it the CI? Things like that. So there's that process of security. We don't want something coming up to the customer and it's not well tested. So
yeah,
uh, the current enterprises, I think, came to this level, and now the next shift I see is happening is with the developer experience using AI.
mm,
So now is GitHub Copilot. Like, hey, how do we use that to
yeah,
generate? I mean, a lot of people are super excited to use it, and I've seen them install it and use it. The only concern I have really with it is this, or even with ChatGPT, or when people do this stuff, like, are you gonna actually know, like, if you're going to do some logic
yeah,
and you're asking it to write you that logic, and then you're like, oh, it works, and then you paste it in. At the end, do you actually know what you actually wrote, right?
yeah,
So it's I understand people, for example, like, let's say you're a very knowledgeable developer. You've learned your develop. You know how to develop. I could probably give you a Notepad plus plus, and you can develop using that.
I
But
like my tools, but
yeah,
yeah, we could probably make it work.
yeah, and we so we can probably look at code and understand why this is happening and reading it. Like for example, just us reading it, just looking at the code and what it does, we could, I think that's a skill.
Mhm.
I feel like with the new generation going straight with GitHub Copilot and these AI tools, they will write something, and if that tool doesn't exist somewhere, or it's down, and they're looking at the code, they're like, I don't know what this code is doing. Like I can't read the code. When they're looking at pull requests, reading the code is very important. Like, oh, what's this is happening and this and that.
Yeah.
Um, but right now, that's what's happening. GitHub Copilot and some generative AI stuff, and it's trying to help the developer code stuff. I think that's the next step in enterprise software, I guess.
Yeah.
AI using.
Yeah, AI is a weird piece of it. Copilot, I've actually soured on quite a bit. Um, there have been times it's very helpful. I find it's mostly helpful as like an autocomplete. Um,
Oh
is
yeah.
just a way of saving some keystrokes, honestly. And there is some value I've noticed along the way of Prettier. Like Prettier, like I said, turned out to be a really good signal for me for is my syntax correct. It's fast enough and it's noticeable enough when you hit save to see the formatting change that hey, this is good.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed that Copilot is good at is sending me a signal that I am writing obvious code, if that makes sense. Like if GitHub Copilot is able to correctly interpret my intent, um, then I'm on the right track. That I'm doing something that's reasonable, it's straightforward, it makes sense. I think that's a good sign. But I have had things where I've been like, oh, let me write the name of this function. And then Copilot's like, oh, I know what you're trying to do here. And it does it. And it does it like 95% of the way. But there's like this one edge case that it just takes a different way than I would have expected or than I would have wanted. But I just hit tab and it auto completed it for me. And I didn't think about that. And I went forward. And then later on, I spent like 20 minutes trying to figure out this issue. Why isn't this working? All it turns out that function that Copilot made uh, ruined it. It ruined it for me. And I could have instead just spent 5 minutes writing it out myself, or probably less, probably like 2 minutes or something like that. It wasn't a hard function. I just was lazy and let Copilot do it. And I don't know, maybe letting it be a black box or letting whatever happen. It ended up biting me in the butt, and that's happened more than once to me. So
uh,
I don't know. I think the world of AI is interesting for sure. I think it definitely reinforces the need for automated validation, though.
yeah.
Is one of the things that's very obvious to me. Another thing is just scary is the generation of programmers that are coming up now that have Copilot from the beginning.
Yes.
I can't imagine like they're not having to go through like the hard parts of learning what's going on because Copilot's auto completing it for them. I think that's something in my gut tells me that's a bad thing because they're not going to get the value of having put in the hard work and the sort of the frustration of going through it. I feel like that frustration, while it sucks, is where
Yeah.
like you grow. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
I'm
it,
it's
it's
maybe
it's
I'm
interesting.
wrong, but everything that I've learned in life is like value comes from the hard parts. And if you just skip over the hard parts, uh I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I
it's
mean, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I mean, my
yeah,
thought is the same as yours. It's like if you don't suffer to learn this thing, then I think suffering is required.
yeah,
When I say suffering, is like reading and looking like, hey, I'm gonna write it this way because insert reasons, and
yeah,
I know this thing is doing this way. So if at the beginning I'm gonna even sort a string, like that, GitHub Command can just write. like it
Yeah.
sees you want to like sort string. Yeah, it can do that. But you writing it yourself, you trying to figure out how to write that yourself, teaches you a few things.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well,
and I,
there's so much nuance I feel like you get from struggling through it and actually writing it yourself, keystroke by keystroke, that gets lost when you hit tab and then you review it.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not yours. It feels like, I don't know.
yeah. And,
I could be wrong.
no,
My opinions are still unformed entirely on this, but uh,
yeah, I'll wait to see. I have a bunch of people using it. I haven't used it yet, but I know a lot of my team is using it. And right
yeah,
now, when we're looking at something, I see them typing something. It's auto completing, and then they delete, and then they're actually writing. So I don't. Maybe they don't know how to use it yet expertly, because I think you can add prompts, and it could generate whatever you want it to generate. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's the way the world is going towards. Um, and if hopefully it helps. And I think a lot of people are saying, "Oh, is it going to replace development?" I like, I don't believe so, because you know, um, then the person solving. I think at some point we will need to know how to prompt stuff. Like we need to know how to like use ChatGPT with the prompting. Like I need you to do XYZ with XY, thing like that.
yeah,
I'll be surprised to that enterprise software can be just created with like prompting,
yeah,
um, and those checks, like I think a human has to, because something can come out and then the company could lose $100 million.
yeah.
I think that's
It'll happen. It'll absolutely happen, I think. I do
yeah,
think there's like some promise in, like, maybe going back to what we had talked about before, like the two pass piece of
yeah,
it where you write your validation. If maybe like we got to a place where like humans end up writing a lot of validation code, and then you if and maybe we get really good at that, and then we set out these tools that are essentially just autocompletes, smart autocompletes, but you say, hey, I've defined the criteria here in this validation code, write me a package, or write me a
yeah,
function, or write me a files that will make this test pass. And like, that's, I feel like that would be a very, like, you're already giving like a green and a red light. If we
yeah,
can, if I Copilot may could do that, or maybe there's some other kind of tool just around the corner that you know will be able to take that and easily get to some file that implements something that satisfies the validation. And that
yeah,
wouldn't be that bad of a world. That would be kind of a cool world. That I think that would actually lead to a lot more you know solid software at the end of the day, particularly because I think engineers will get really good at writing validation, because that's pretty much all we'll be doing. Right, so we could really hone in on that. And that world has some promise. I don't know. um it
yeah,
has some promise, but it may also just be like super theoretical, and you know maybe there's
yeah,
nothing there. I
yeah.
don't know.
The,
I've been around this merry-go-round too many times, Hicham.
I agree. One of the other stuff is, I think, with this AI stuff, it's enterprise is very restricted. So
Hmm,
Chat, like for example, in my company, ChatGPT will never come into
right.
the ecosystem. They're
Well,
working on their
yeah.
own. Yeah,
Okay.
working on their own ChatGPT internally, and but actually having ChatGPT. There's other enterprises I know that they are using it,
Yeah.
but uh, did you hear about that Samsung issue where somebody puts use ChatGPT? I don't know, I think, and now their code base, or let me look. There's something about Samsung and ChatGPT, and I think all companies want to get away from that. Let me see. Samsung ChatGPT. GPT. Samsung bans ChatGPT among employees after sensitive code leak.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what it is. Like with these LLMs, what you're doing is you're sending information over the wire. Like that's what Copilot. As I understand, and maybe maybe this is not correct, so maybe I shouldn't say it out of turn. But my rough understanding of like how Copilot came to be is it was surprisingly easy because what you do is you take the context, which is just the code, you send it to ChatGPT, and you say, "Do this," and so like you're sending your code base over, and so Chat GPT has that then at that point, like it's just
yeah, I
request with that information in it. So
yeah. Now, GitHub Copilot has been approved in my company, but my company would not let anything go over the wire. So I think that GitHub
okay.
Copilot is very closed off to internal. So I haven't looked into what GitHub Copilot does,
Mhm.
but I can safely guarantee that my company would not let that go to ChatGPT or anywhere else. It's
Interesting.
just there for guiding. I don't think it stores anything, or if it stores anything, it'll probably be local to the company servers.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting. Okay.
yeah. So, but yeah, no, whew, the cyber team and everybody, all the security folks have looked into it before
Yeah.
giving it to the. So you have to ask for access and permission to install it in the IDE.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, ChatGPT is not going to go. GitHub Copilot, we'll see. If something leaks, then automatically. So as these AI tools go, like Samsung right now is probably not wanting GitHub Copilot or any of that in their ecosystem because of what the leak. If there's
Yeah.
more leaks, if there's more leaks and something happens, that could probably make enterprise like, oh, let's pull back, let's pull back on this, right?
Yeah.
But that's
Well,
where
it's a
enterprise software.
tricky tight wire to walk, I imagine, for enterprise folks because you could fall off either side of it. Like, yes, to your point, you can absolutely have a leak, and you know you send out over too much stuff over the wire, and something gets leaked out. But on the other hand, if you don't go with it and you get left behind, that's j-
Yeah,
just as bad. Well, maybe not just
yeah,
as bad. It's that's the worst long term because a competitor rises up that does use all these tools and they eat your lunch. So I don't
yeah.
know.
I think there's a difference between like the AI in tooling and the
Hmm.
AI that's used in the product itself. So
Hmm.
in our product, like using AI to uh, figure out fraud, right?
Yeah.
Like you're looking at these things the AI will figure out much faster than a human with more cases that, oh, this transaction is fraudulent.
Right.
So I can see AI becoming very, and actually we're going towards that. But in developer tooling, imagine that fraud algorithm gets leaked out because you used ChatGPT or AI to write it, and now
Yeah.
it's out there. So
Now they can back engineer it.
now they come back
Yeah.
engineering and come and steal people's money, which yeah, it's still going on. I feel like if the Samsung situation happens, then they'll probably roll it back. Like, okay, no AI in development,
Yeah.
but definitely use the use of AI in other things, in the features themselves.
Yeah.
That so not to get left behind for sure.
Right.
That one they definitely need to do. Um,
Yeah.
but we'll see. That now throughout this whole journey, the one thing, if I look from like all these things, the one thing I kind of miss about the old days is the speed of development.
Mm.
Um, I think I told you this a while back that um, you can get set up and running and change code and in pretty quickly back back in my when I started
Yeah.
in enterprise, you could make the features could be cranked up. They're cranked up much faster than what I see right now.
Yeah.
The amount of work delivered back then compared to what's delivered right now, because right now there's not only in development tooling and etc. There's also processes on how you're going to how you're going to do this feature, and you have to
Mhm.
collaborate with product ownership, product, you have to collaborate with design, you have to collaborate with this da, 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 da. There's like these these people that specialize in their fields to
Right.
try to make the best product for customers, and that best product takes them a little bit more time uh,
Yeah.
to build and come out. The one thing I like about NX and you guys is that whenever you guys develop something, it's like, oh, they did it. Oh, it's out. Oh, it's coming out. So it feels like you guys are developing with these new tools um, in a speed that enterprise does not cannot match. It's like my biggest. I wish I could deliver things faster.
Hmm.
Um, it's like everything we do in enterprise, if in a startup or I would do it, it'll, let's say it takes a month.
Hmm.
In an enterprise, it'll take 6 months
Yeah.
to do. And I personally never understood why that it takes so long. I mean, I can't understand why, but that the thing I miss from my beginnings of enterprise software to now is the speed of, of getting features out and the speed of um, development. I
Yeah.
think.
Well, I mean, speed is absolutely super important to us, and in some ways, like what we aim to be is the enterprise secret weapon for being able to still have some of that velocity, at least with your tooling, right? Because that's kind of the generic piece that we can provide a solution for that keep you up to date on all those things. Now, when it comes to products and like working with all the cooks in the kitchen, and like hopefully the market is doing a good job of making sure that there's a balance being struck there, so you're still profitable, you're still putting out a high quality product, but you're also able to go at a fast enough velocity that you're keeping your customers happy. So
Yeah.
those are all checks and balances, business specific stuff I probably can't help with. That's I don't know if that's like you need a scrum master or you need to get rid of a scrum master. I don't know. But uh, th- that's not my expertise. But the tooling stuff, that's definitely something that's a lot of fun for us, and that's what really gets us excited, is to give enterprise the secret weapon for their tooling, for their CI, for architecting their application, so that a lot of this stuff can be put off, and the instead the enterprise companies can focus on that business domain. How do we you know do the best uh, product for our users? Because like at the end of the day, like we're talking about the 5 teams each implementing things their 5 different ways. Think of how many teams across all the Fortune 500 companies are all doing that right now, and just the waste of that, when like these are things that are pretty generic at the end of
Yes.
the day. So like all that time, all those sprints or cycles or however you want to call it, all the resources being thrown at it, hopefully when hopefully there's there's a better way, and that's what we're trying to be, that's what we're aiming to be. Like, use us. The NX package itself is free, all the plugins are free.
Yeah.
Use it.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I would second that. Like I don't even think twice right now. It's like if I'm creating a personal project or if I'm actually talking to anybody, like I'm not gonna go and waste my time. It's like NX. Like that's the automatic what I'm going to use, for any new project at my company. And and at the other day, I was like, this guy was walking by. He's like, "Oh, I gotta write this thing." And da, 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 da. I was like, "Hey, just use NX here, NX.dev. Just click getting started and just do it that way, and you don't have to worry about like a bunch of stuff. You can install that and write your code."
Yeah.
And and I like about NX is like it's not just. I think in the beginning it was for Angular, but now it's like it can be a React. You can just plug it into anything
Oh
you
yeah.
need. So that's really great.
Yeah.
And then the NX Cloud. Now that is like uh, that was a game changer for us. Like where we were able, I'm thinking right now. It's like if uh, if there was no NX Cloud, like what would be the state of my CI right now? Like I'm looking at the so I also own so I have the web, iOS, and Android CIs. So
Hmm.
I'm looking at the mobile ones, and they take an ungodly amount of time to build and continue and merge. When I say ungodly, I'm talking like 3 hours or 4 hours or something like that, right? Which would be crazy for a web CI to go. And when it for us, it takes like around the 30-40 minutes with the amount of checks that we have. Um, and people complain about that time that it takes. Like if it takes if they're used to like 30 some minutes and it takes 39-40 minutes, ah, something's wrong with the CI. I need to and but yeah, it's without an xCloud, I remember, whew, we would have to build something like an xCloud to for caching and
Yeah.
parallelizing and stuff. And
Well, that's the thing. Like a lot of these things are generic at the end of the
yeah.
day. So like the NX Cloud is like so that's a platform, that's a service that we provide. So we can't give that one out for free. But we we are working on building that out, and I think that's I'm excited for the future that we can provide there. Speaking of which, I gotta talk to you maybe after the call because we got our new Gradle plugin. So
Oh,
maybe we can
oh,
help with
okay,
those Android
okay,
ones. Maybe we can
okay,
help with those
okay,
Android
okay,
builds.
okay,
So
okay.
yeah.
I definitely like to hear. We connected it with Gradle Enterprise, and I was actually looking at it's nothing like like the. I was trying to find out in one PR here what was wrong, and I
Mhm.
was looking, and maybe it's my ignorance of the results in Grail Enterprises just to see what's going on there.
It's
But
definitely a different. It's a little bit of a shift. The Gradle plugin, though, one of the coolest things about it is it uses like the Gradle files. So like you know how for NX you have the project.json files,
mhm.
and we've looked at some ways of like how we can like add our own plugins to extend that graph a little bit more. We use the same exact plugin features, the pluggability of NX to just read in those Gradle files, parse it in, and we can create our tasks based on that. So you actually don't end up writing any NX aside from just like installing the plugin essentially. And then once the
Ah,
plugin's in, like you keep the Gradle files that you have, and like you still run Gradle, like you still run Gradle as this way of structuring and building those things, but now you have NX as a way of parsing out those tasks. So like on NX Cloud, you can still see all the tasks broken out, like you do for like an npm script or for like an NX task, and
oh,
yeah,
that would be I'd love to see that.
yeah,
I
the
would
caching's
love to
there, all
see
the
that.
stuff's there. So
I
yeah.
love to see that. If that's I'm excited. So yeah, when I come back, let's meet up so we can look at that. Any plans for iOS?
uh Not on the immediate horizon. Gradle was the big push. There'd been like some discussions, I think, or maybe just like which is the first non JavaScript technology we really want to go after. And like .NET was a big contender for some time, and like we do a lot of Kotlin stuff too. So we eventually honed in on Gradle as being the first one, but like
All right.
if
Yeah.
there's the interest there, we've there's potential. So
No, no,
it,
definitely,
yeah, so
definitely.
we can
If
figure
that
out the plugins, and if Gradle goes well, if Gradle is a success here, that opens up a door for us to like be able to say, hey, we had some success using this pluggability. Like in some ways, this could prove the pluggability is ready, or maybe it's not ready yet. But I think I'm pretty confident that we're using Gradle internally, so we're doing it ourselves. I think I think we have a really good shot with this. So yeah,
I'm excited. I'll definitely. We'll definitely sync up and try that. I love to see what I see in NX Cloud in the especially that UI. Love to see the Gradle stuff. We were currently, you know, we're bogged down with like support requests and people like, hey, what's wrong with my PR?
yeah.
And we're actually building, like the team is actually building something called "What's Wrong with My PR," where we would connect to
Send it
these.
to GPT.
Yeah.
God.
And we connect to that. Yeah, and we connect to whatever the builds are running.
Yeah.
We'll pull. So the first iteration, we pulled the logs somewhere,
Mhm.
and we would parse those logs, those Jenkins logs, to see if there's like any error. So people sometimes don't have access to get to Jenkins, or they're not familiar. Developers not familiar with where to go, and
Wow.
then
Well, I mean,
looking at these 1,000 line logs.
yeah. That's where you fall down with Jenkins, I feel like. And that, you know, our time with y'all during that engagement, that was a big motivator for us to try to build NX Cloud the way we did. To
Yeah.
like just make those logs and those figure out what's going on very easy. And that's actually one of the initiatives that we were working on. I don't know if you saw our announcement about the AI enhancements we're bringing to NX Cloud, but that was one of the things we're looking to do is like for with each pull request, whenever there are failures, we'll have the just the short explanations of specifically what it is with like links to the actual logs, so you can see there's the big red X. You'll see like the little magic sign or whatever logo we end up using, and then you can click into that and go into, hey, this is what this is what's wrong. And this is how you could probably fix it.
You
So
know, if once you do that, the thing that we're working on, what's wrong with my PR,
yeah,
it will probably be an iframe to that.
there you go. There you go. Well, I mean, there's all kinds of interesting stuff we can do there because we already have like the integration with GitHub where we're annotating the PRs and stuff with the
Yeah.
comments and stuff like that. So there's definitely ways we can do that. So you won't even maybe not even need the iframe. I don't know, but
Yeah, yeah, no,
yeah,
it's gonna be. I'm excited. I'm excited with the Grail stuff. I'm excited the what's wrong with my PR stuff.
yeah.
It's so, anyway, that's the full iteration. That's my story, I guess, with the enterprise world, and
It's a cool story. Thanks for sharing with us, Chum. Appreciate
you
you.
know, thank you for everything. It's always great to talk to you, man. And
Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's wrap this up because it's been great. But I know you've got stuff to do, and so do I. So yeah, always good to see you, man. And we'll get you on again once we get you into Gradle. How about
all
that?
right, all right. Yeah, I'll definitely come back and talk about the learnings and I'm pretty sure the successes of because everything we do with you guys turns into a success. So
Well, I appreciate the confidence. But yeah, let's wait till the chickens are hatched
yeah,
before we count them. Right.
will do.
All right. Thanks, man. Catch y'all
Thank you.
later.
Thank you.